Okay, let's unpack this. If I ask you, like, picture the golden age of American TV, right? The scene that probably leaps to mind, it's got to be black and white, that dimly lit tiny Brooklyn
Oh,
apartment.
yeah, absolutely.
And it's Ralph Cramden, Jackie Gleason, just larger than life, blustering, making
To
threats.
the moon, Alice.
Exactly. And then there's his neighbor, Ed Norton, Art Carney, doing that amazing, almost like balletic shuffle, preparing to put on his sewer uniform. It's just perfect.
It really is an iconic image. And that chemistry, between Gleason and Carney, it felt so real, so completely effortless. It basically defined comedy timing for a whole generation.
People really bought into the whole thing, didn't they? The abrasive bus driver and
Uh-huh.
the gentle kind of goofy sewer worker. They seemed like partners in crime, bound by this deep, maybe complicated but deep friendship. That's the magic we all
That
remember.
is the magic of it.
But the deeper we dive into the sources, the more honestly stunning the truth becomes. Decades later, Art Carney himself, the guy who brought all that warmth to Ed Norton, he reveals something that just shocked fans, historians too.
Yeah, it was huge.
He admitted he was constantly miserable, suffering from like crippling anxiety, and was, and this is his quote, close to walking away forever from this incredibly beloved show.
And that misery, it pretty much had one main source,
Yeah.
Jackie Gleason. The volatile, unpredictable, yeah, genius, but volatile.
So our mission today is to really understand how one of TV's most foundational sitcoms, those, the classic 39 episodes of The Honeymooners, how it was actually built on this razor's edge, exhaustion, fear, deep professional conflict.
We're diving into that massive gap, that chasm between what everyone saw on screen, the perfection and the often brutal reality behind the scenes. What did it really cost Art Carney to keep that mask of Ed Norton on?
Let's jump in. Okay, so to really get the intensity of this conflict, the one that unfolded between them, we kind of have to appreciate the landscape first. Early 1950s television.
Right. It was still pretty new, the medium itself, still
Yeah.
finding its feet, culturally speaking.
Post-war America was, settling down. Families were gathering around these new boxes in their living rooms, and they were hungry for shows that spoke to their lives. The hopes, the frustrations.
And just the need for a shared laugh, right?
Yeah,
Escapism.
definitely.
Television had become the new hearth, really.
Yeah.
The center of the home, usually just one small, kind of fuzzy black and white screen. I think Gleason arrives, like a force of nature.
He wasn't just a comedian, was he?
Oh, no. He was.
Hmm.
Something else. His charisma was off the charts. Huge physical presence. And his timing. Everyone agreed his timing was just perfect. Unmatched.
And he was the one who came up with the sketches, right? The ones that eventually grew into the Honeymooners on his variety show, the Jackie Gleason show.
That's right. It wasn't immediate, but once he landed on Ralph and Alice Cramden, that was it. Gold.
Yeah.
It tapped into something real. The struggles of working class New Yorkers. Cramped apartments, always short on cash, marriage tested by, just never having enough money.
Those early sketches were powerful, yeah.
Yeah.
But the real magic, the explosion, happened when they cast Art Carney as Ed Norton.
That was the key. Gleason as Ralph, he was the bluster, the big angry outbursts, the dreamer whose plans always, always failed,
Yeah.
and honestly often pretty cruel to Alice.
Right.
Carney's Norton was the necessary counterweight, the balance.
Can you dig into that a bit more? What made Norton the perfect foil?
Well, Gleason was all noise and heat, right?
Ah.
Explosions. Carney was grounding,
Right.
almost graceful, ethereal in his movements sometimes. Norton's just a humble sewer worker. Earl constantly makes fun of him, but he had this basic warmth,
Yeah.
And crucially, zero malice. None.
And the physical comedy.
Oh, amazing. Carney brought this almost Chaplin-like quality, that
Yeah.
meticulous routine of getting dressed for work, the slow buttoning, carefully hanging the vest.
Yeah.
Or just the famous entrance, "Hello, Ralph." It was pure physical genius.
It really was. And those moments, they relied so much on rhythm, on precise timing. It made Norton way more than just a sidekick.
Absolutely. He was an equal comedic partner. He provided the heart. He made sure Ralph's rages didn't just sink the whole show into darkness. You needed Norton's lightness.
And the audience saw that, didn't they? They saw the affection underneath all the arguing.
Yes, they saw this grumpy bus driver and this, lovable sewer worker as this unbreakable team. It reflected that working class friendship, that camaraderie. So when it finally spun off into its own half-hour sitcom in 1955, the classic 39, we all know the anticipation was just huge,
The
massive.
critics, they loved it. Right from the start. Sharp writing, immediate performances. The characters became icons almost overnight.
To the public, yeah, it looked like destiny. Two comedy giants just meant to be together on that stage.
But that's the illusion, isn't it? The
Yep.
one we need to peel back. because the sources, they make it clear. While the world was celebrating this perfect show, backstage, the cracks weren't just forming. They were already deep.
Volatile. Gleason's incredible brilliance, tragically maybe, was tangled up with his personal chaos, his professional chaos, and Art Carney, right from the start, was feeling the immense, crushing weight of all that strain.
And it's this split, this duality in Gleason that we really need to focus on next, because the same raw, untamed energy that made him so captivating on screen, that was exactly what made him almost impossible to work with off screen.
Yeah, the real core of Carney's misery, it wasn't really about artistic disagreements over the show's themes or where it was going. It was much more fundamental, the clash of process, how they worked.
Okay.
And this difference, this fundamental difference in how they approached comedy, their craft, that became the engine driving the conflict. It stretched Carney's nerves just to the absolute breaking point.
Let's start with Gleason's side of it then. People say he had this almost photographic memory. Is that right?
That's what multiple sources describe. He could apparently read a script once, maybe twice, and just have it. Every line, every cue, stage directions, everything. Locked in.
Wow. So how did that amazing talent end up causing chaos on set?
Well, because he could do that, it led to this complete, utter disdain for preparation, for rehearsal.
Right.
Since Gleason could memorize it all instantly, he genuinely believed rehearsing was, and this is a quote you see often, a waste of time. He thought practicing comedy, running scenes over and over, actually killed the spark. Drained the zing out of it.
So his whole philosophy was, like, true comedy, the real belly laughs, they only happen in the moment. Spontaneity, instinct, not structure.
Exactly. And here's the crucial part. He wasn't just the star. He was often the producer, the main creative force, everything. And he was a guaranteed ratings hit. So his method became the method.
For everyone.
Everyone, including the rest of the cast. Oh yeah, Audrey Meadows, Joyce Randolph, Art Carney, they all had to adapt to this. Well, this shoot it live, shoot it right now, kind of chaotic approach.
But Art Carney was the complete opposite, wasn't he? You described him as meticulous.
Absolutely. A craftsman. He didn't operate on raw instinct. He built his comedy. It was about rhythm, blocking, timing. He needed structure. He needed to know exactly where his body would be on stage, how his hat would land after a gag, how many steps it took to get that perfect, subtle, physical beat.
He saw comedy as, like, architecture, something you build carefully.
That's a great way to put it, piece by piece. Gleason's whole approach just ripped that structure away from him, took away his security blanket. Sources say it forced Carney into this constant state of high-stakes improvisation. He was always just reacting to whatever Gleason threw at him, instead of performing the character he'd carefully prepared.
I can't imagine the stress. Walking onto a live set knowing your main co-star probably hasn't rehearsed, might show up late, maybe drunk, and could just decide to scrap the entire scene based on a whim, it sounds like. Like professional psychological warfare.
It does, doesn't it? And on top of that internal professional stress, you had Gleason's external volatility. Beyond just hating rehearsal, he was infamous for his habits.
The drinking and gambling stories.
They're legendary. Showing up late after heavy nights out, sometimes both drinking and gambling, it was apparently pretty common.
And what about the atmosphere for the crew? You hear whispers about his temper.
Terrified. Crew members were genuinely terrified. People spoke about it later, always in hushed tones. His temper was explosive. He could snap into a, quote, hurricane of rage over tiny things, a missed cue, a technical glitch, or if someone dared question one of his creative choices.
And because he delivered the ratings, the power balance was just completely off.
Totally skewed. Absolute power, really. Writers lived in fear. They knew he might just toss out weeks of work, a whole script, days before air, or worse.
Moments before taping.
Exactly. Directors often felt sidelined. The final word, creatively, was always Gleason's. The network, CBS, the producers. They basically tolerated this dictatorship because he was a ratings machine, a massive moneymaker, untouchable, essentially.
Can you give us like a specific example? How did this chaos actually play out during filming?
Well, there were quite a few stories about Gleason just disappearing, midday, poof,
Dawn.
vanish for hours, leave the entire cast, a crew, everyone just sitting there, waiting, often assuming maybe they were done for the day. Then he'd reappear, maybe looking a bit worse for wear, still feeling last night, and announce he had a new grand idea.
Oh, no.
And then he'd proceed to rewrite huge chunks of the script, right there, on the spot, weeks of work potentially thrown out.
So you've got Art Carney, who spent Days meticulously planning Norton's little physical comedy bits, the timing, and Gleason just walks in, throws the script pages in the air metaphorically, and says, okay, new plan. We're doing this now, live.
That's pretty much it. Lines that were supposed to build into this rhythmic back and forth, suddenly just thrown out on the fly. Carney, who depended on that structure like oxygen, was forced into this state of just manic reaction, just trying to keep the scene alive, keep it from totally collapsing. His whole performance became an act of survival.
And that's the crazy irony, isn't it? The audience sees this raw, explosive energy on screen and thinks, wow, that's genuine, that's spontaneous brilliance. And look, sometimes it was brilliance because Gleason was a genius.
He was, no question.
But the engine driving that spontaneity, especially for Carney, was just pure stress, sheer professional terror almost. He never knew which Gleason he'd get, the charming, brilliant performer, or the raging tyrant.
Exactly. The public saw the magic. Carney felt the exhaustion, that effortless comedy we cherish. It was built directly on his nerves being stretched to the absolute limit. He had to put on the mask of the simple, happy-go-lucky Norton, while inside, he's carrying this crushing weight. Knowing that the partnership making him famous was also threatening to destroy his craft, maybe even his sanity.
Which brings us to that internal weight, the huge personal cost Art Carney paid. It eventually led him right to his breaking point. Unlike Gleason, who seemed to thrive on the noise, the chaos, Carney was the opposite. Quiet, sensitive, deeply methodical.
Yeah, predictability was stability for him. So every week of filming wasn't just a job, it was a trial. Personally, professionally, both.
His whole temperament was just anti-chaos. He saw himself as a craftsman, right?
First and foremost. And being forced to wing it, often because Gleason hadn't prepared or just changed everything last minute, that felt like betraying his art. He was a perfectionist. He genuinely hated delivering what he felt was a sloppy performance because the timing was off or the emotional beat wasn't quite right because they were rushing.
And the sources say this pressure, it wasn't just internal. People around him saw it. The strain was visible.
Oh, absolutely. Crew members consistently remembered seeing Carney backstage during breaks, not relaxing, chatting, but pacing, chain smoking nervously. Yeah, and he was often heard just muttering, almost to himself, voicing his anxiety. Things like, I cannot keep doing this forever. He felt completely trapped. The constant not knowing which lines are staying. Is Gleason even going to show up today? When's the next explosion coming? It was just this relentless, grinding drain.
So the psychological stress, it had real physical effects. This wasn't just, having a tough week at work.
No. This was chronic anxiety,
Yeah.
deep stress. The breaking point, according to accounts, came during these really demanding periods. Intense filming schedules, maybe combined with live appearances they had to do.
And he actually considered quitting.
He did more than consider it. He confided in close friends, family members. He was genuinely ready to hand in his notice. Seriously ready to walk away, regardless of what it meant for his career.
Wow.
At that point, the relief, just escaping the unbearable stress, the constant dread, that mattered more to him than the fame, the money, anything.
And of course, that kind of intense professional strain, it doesn't just stay at work, does it? It follows you home.
Never does. It absolutely followed him home, severely damaged his private life. Carney, who was already kind of reserved, maybe struggled a bit with professional insecurity anyway.
Oh.
Gleason's bullying, his dominance, just magnified all those doubts.
So he'd come home. How was he described?
Exhausted, irritable, and emotionally drained. That's a phrase that comes up after dealing with the Gleason roller coaster all day.
It's such a common tragic pattern, isn't it? The job's just eating away at the person. How did it impact his first marriage?
It suffered hugely. His wife later confirmed, the man she lived with was not the cheerful Ed Norton everyone saw on TV. He was withdrawn, quick-tempered sometimes, often just emotionally shut down, unavailable. Humor was his shield in public, the testament mechanism. But at home, that mask came off.
And this immense stress, this anxiety, it led him down a path towards dependency, didn't it? A lifelong struggle.
It did, sadly. The sources detail how Carney started leaning really heavily on alcohol. It began as a way to cope, to just calm his frayed nerves after a day on set, maybe steel himself for facing Gleason again the next morning.
Just trying to manage the terror, really.
Exactly. And what probably started is, taking the edge off, which, let's be honest, was pretty standard in the entertainment world back then. It soon became much more. A dangerous, debilitating crutch. He was self-medicating severe professional anxiety.
That's just a devastating irony, isn't it? The man playing Ed Norton, this symbol of simple, beloved, working-class joy, was privately unraveling, battling depression, fighting addiction, all while keeping up this flawless public illusion of warmth and friendship with Gleason.
He felt completely trapped, caught between being Ed Norton, this national icon of innocent fun, and the reality of being a man just struggling intensely inside. Feeling like he could never really escape Gleason's shadow, even years after the show ended. Just the effort of maintaining that public facade day after day. Wow. That alone must have been utterly exhausting. Well, okay, so that leads us to the really critical question, doesn't it? If the set was that toxic, if the personal cost was so incredibly high, why? Why did Art Carney stay? Why did he endure all of that, push himself right to the brink instead of just quitting and getting that immediate relief?
It's complicated, right? It speaks volumes about fame, about professional commitment. It wasn't just one simple reason. First off, there was just the sheer weight of public expectation.
No, that pressure was massive.
Yeah.
By 1956, The Honeymooners wasn't just a hit show. It was like woven into the American cultural fabric.
Yeah.
And Carney was Ed Norton. He'd completely become the character in the public eye. Quitting meant letting down. Well, millions of fans who adored him. That's a quote, you see. He felt this genuine responsibility to the audience, and maybe felt that responsibility outweighed his own suffering.
And then secondly, there's just the cold, hard reality of show business back then.
The career risk was huge. You got to remember, Carney had been a working actor for years before this, often struggling, dealing with insecurity, unstable paychecks. The Honeymooners gave him something he'd never really had: security. Steady money, a foundation for the future.
So for an actor who really understood what it meant to struggle,
walking away from a guaranteed smash hit.
Yeah.
Terrifying, especially thinking of going back to the instability that had defined so much of his career before Gleason.
Okay, so it's a mix of loyalty to the fans, maybe, and fear. Fear of letting people down, fear of returning to financial insecurity. But wasn't there also some professional respect there for Gleason's talent, despite all the madness?
Absolutely. And that's maybe the most complex, the most nuanced part of their whole relationship. Even though he hated the chaos, Carney never, ever denied Gleason's brilliance. His sheer, almost terrifying genius.
He knew what he was part of.
Intimately. He knew working alongside Gleason, no matter how painful it was personally, was cementing both their names in television history.
Yeah.
Forever.
Is there an example of that sense of awe, even amidst the misery?
Yeah. Carney admitted later in life, much later, that even when he was literally shaking with nerves because Gleason had just gone completely off script, improvised a huge chunk of dialogue, there were moments where Gleason's timing, his delivery, his pure comedic instinct, it was so perfect, so impeccable that Carney felt genuine awe.
Admiration.
It was a partnership of professional necessity, really. Gleason brought the raw, unpredictable fire. Carney brought the disciplined heart, the grounded reaction that made it all work.
So it sounds like a friendship, and more like two chemicals reacting. Volatile elements creating something amazing but dangerous.
That's a fantastic analogy. Exactly. And then finally, there was also loyalty. Loyalty to the other people involved, the rest of the cast, the crew.
Right. He wasn't just thinking about himself.
People described him as a quiet protector. He genuinely cared about Audrey Meadows, who played Alice, and Joyce Randolph, Trixie. Audrey Meadows often tried to be a buffer, didn't she? A calming force between Gleason and Carney.
Yeah, you hear stories about that. And Joyce Randolph said Carney actively tried to shield the crew sometimes, right? From the worst of Gleason's tantrums.
Yes. He felt a sense of duty that went beyond just his own performance. He knew if he walked, the whole thing might collapse. And that would put all his colleagues, people he cared about, back out of work, back into that insecurity he knew so well.
So Art Carney just swallowed the agony, put on the smile for the cameras, delivered the laughs night after night, kept up the illusion that Ralph and Norton's friendship was real, unbreakable, all while the internal price just kept getting higher and higher.
He chose professional endurance over personal peace, year after year.
So, for decades, literally decades after those classic 39 episodes wrapped, Art Carney kept this incredible wall of silence up around the truth of what it was really like working on that set. He knew the myth he was guarding.
He absolutely did. In every interview, through the 60s, the 70s, the 80s, it was always the same. Polite, respectful praise for Gleason, calling him larger than life, focusing on the fun parts, performing live.
Never hinting at the darkness behind it.
Never. He was protecting the legacy. Fans had poured so much emotion into that idea of Ralph and Norton's perfect, if complicated, friendship. He wasn't going to be the one to shatter it with stories of backstage agony and chaos. He wore the mask of the loyal, admiring co-star, even long after Gleason himself had passed away.
But then something changed. Decades later, he's in his mid-70s, and Art Carney finally feels free to speak honestly. What do we think changed? Why then?
Perspective, probably. Time. At 76, his career was legendary, untouchable. He was financially secure, and the need to protect the reputation of a man who was no longer alive and, by extension, protect his own career, it just wasn't there anymore. The fear that had kind of ruled his professional life for so long, it finally lifted. He felt free.
And the confession, when it came, it was powerful, explosive even. What did he actually say? What words did he use?
He said it point blank. Working with Gleason had genuinely, quote, nearly broken him. He described the whole routine, the chaos, the last-minute rewrites, the drinking, the rages. He said it turned the set into a place of dread.
Dread. Wow.
Yeah, and he stated very clearly that he was dangerously close to quitting altogether, that the relief from the stress, just getting away from it, mattered way more to him than the fame or the money the show brought.
And this didn't just reveal the stress, did it? It completely blew up the core illusion, their personal relationship.
Totally shattered it. He made it absolutely crystal clear that the easy warmth, the camaraderie we saw on screen, it did not reflect reality. Off-screen, they barely connected. The relationship was strictly business, a professional necessity built on sharing a stage, not actual affection or friendship.
And he confirmed the reason he stayed?
He confirmed it was fear. Fear of losing his livelihood, fear of career failure, fear of poverty, fear of letting down the audience, not loyalty to Gleason the man.
That late-life honesty, it just completely reframes how we, the audience, have to look at the Honeymooners, doesn't it? That effortless timing we all admired, it was often fueled by sheer desperation, by survival instincts on Carney's part.
Right. The friction you see between Ralph and Norton on screen, that frustration in their dynamic, it was actually mirroring the real-life friction between the actors.
It adds so many layers to those performances now. The raw energy we loved, it wasn't just great writing, it was. It was a genuine high-stakes struggle happening right there, in real time. Carney was acting, sure, but he was also genuinely reacting to this unpredictable, chaotic force next to him.
Exactly.
And yet, despite this really painful revelation, the show's legacy, it seems stronger than ever.
It absolutely is, those 39 episodes.
Yeah.
Still a cornerstone of TV comedy. Foundational, universally praised. The revelation didn't diminish the achievement. If anything, it added a layer of humanity to it.
Yeah, I agree.
Carney's honesty didn't tarnish his image at all. It humanized him. It revealed the incredible strength, the endurance it took to deliver that unforgettable performance year after year. Gleason.
Yeah.
Well, Gleason is still respected for his genius, obviously, but now we see him in a much more complicated, maybe even tragic light. A brilliant creative force who caused a lot of collateral damage along the way.
So we end up with this great kind of bittersweet irony, don't we? The legacy is triumph. The story behind it is kind of a tragedy.
It really is. And it leaves you wondering, doesn't it? If Gleason had been easier to work with, more disciplined, rehearsed, would the show have had that same dangerous edge? That explosive, unpredictable quality that made it so timeless? The very tension, the constant tightrope walk that almost broke Art Carney? Maybe that was the necessary fire that forged the comedy that will simply never fade.
Wow. Okay, so that deep dive really leaves us with a powerful takeaway, doesn't it? That true greatness, especially when it comes to creative partnerships, it often comes at this hidden, sometimes really profound human cost.
Yeah. And sometimes the most effective partnerships, the ones that last in history, they aren't built on friendship or affection at all. They're built on sheer professional necessity, maybe even fear, conflict that somehow creates this incredible volatile energy.
Art Carney's final, honest confession, it lets us finally appreciate the sheer physical and emotional endurance it took for him to be Ed Norton night after night. He guarded that myth for decades. But telling the truth finally allowed us to see the real triumph in his performance.
It really did.
So we want to turn this question over to you, the listener, the learner. Knowing the full story now, the personal costs for Art Carney, the anxiety, the health impacts, almost quitting, does that change how you see the magic? That seemingly effortless, unbreakable bond between Ralph and Norton? Was the Honeymooners, in the end, worth the pain that went on behind the scenes?
It's a tough question. We really encourage you to think about it. And hey, share your insights, share your thoughts down in the comments below. We'd love to hear what you think.
And if you appreciated this deep dive, digging into the untold stories of Hollywood history, please show us some support. It really helps. Take a second to like this content, subscribe to the channel if you haven't already.
And definitely click that notification bell for Retro Celeb Talk. That way you won't miss our next deep dive.